A cold wind scraped across the empty bus stop. Swirling snow around the young woman curled on the bench, as if the world itself had turned its back on her. Her bare legs shivered against the frozen metal, and her red dress, once bright, once chosen for a moment that never came, clung to her like a memory she no longer wished to keep. Her name was Ava, and on that bitter winter evening in Denver, she felt like her life had cracked apart beyond repair. Her eyes were swollen from hours of crying, her breath shaky and uneven, and her heart so heavy it felt like it might slip from her chest. She truly believed no one would ever see her again, not really see her, until a tiny pair of boots stopped right in front of her trembling feet. If you believe that kindness still has the power to change lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Ava lifted her head slowly, expecting perhaps another judgmental stare, another passerby pretending not to notice the homeless girl on the bench. Instead, she found a little girl, no older than 5, with golden curls, wide brown eyes, and her small arms open as if she were greeting an old friend. The child wore a tiny pink jacket and stood confidently in the falling snow, completely unfazed by the cold or the scene in front of her. Behind her, a man in his 30s, tall, calm, and handsome in a rugged way, watched with concern, as though uncertain whether to step in or let his daughter speak. "I think you need a hug. Can I hug you?" the little girl had asked, her voice soft but filled with the kind of innocence that cuts deeper than any harsh word. Ava stared at her for a long moment, unable to speak. Her throat tightened, overwhelmed by the sudden presence of this tiny, unexpected beacon of warmth. She didn't understand why a stranger's child would offer her comfort, but something inside her broke open. Before she knew it, tears were streaming down her cheeks again, only this time they carried something different from despair, something like release. The little girl didn't wait for permission. She stepped closer and wrapped her arms around Ava's shaking shoulders with surprising strength. Ava clung to her, burying her face in the child's small shoulder, overwhelmed by the simple purity of the moment. It had been months since anyone had touched her with kindness. Months since her world had spiraled out of control, since losing her job, since the painful breakup that left her without a home, since her family's silence after she reached out for help. Everything had collapsed so quickly she barely had time to catch her breath. The man finally approached, kneeling down gently beside them. His name was Mark, and the little girl, his daughter, was Hannah. He spoke softly, his voice warm but cautious, asking if Ava was hurt, if she needed help, if she was safe. Ava tried to answer, but the words tangled in her mouth. She felt embarrassed, fragile, and exposed beneath the glow of the flickering bus stop lights. She expected judgment. She expected pity. But instead, Mark simply waited, patient and steady, until she was able to breathe again. When she finally managed to speak, the story spilled out of her like water from a cracked dam. How she had lost everything, how she had tried to pretend she was okay, how she wound up sitting on that bench with nowhere left to go. Each sentence felt like ripping stitches from old wounds, but the father and daughter listened quietly, without pulling away. The snowfall thickened around them, blanketing the street in a soft white hush, as if giving Ava permission to begin again. Mark told her they lived only a few blocks away, and that Hannah had insisted on stopping when she saw Ava crying. He admitted he normally would never invite a stranger home, especially with a child, but something about Ava's pain struck him deeply. He offered her a warm meal, a place to rest for the night, and the chance to get out of the cold before the temperature dropped further. Ava hesitated, unsure if she deserved kindness anymore, but Hannah tugged gently on her hand and smiled, the kind of smile that made the world feel safe again, even if just for a moment. Inside their modest apartment, Ava felt the warmth hit her like a wave, the smell of soup simmering in the kitchen, the soft glow of a lamp, the scattered toys on the living room rug. Everything felt impossibly homelike. She tried not to cry again, but the comfort was too much. Mark gave her space, offering clean clothes, a blanket, and a chance to shower. For the first time in months, she felt human again, washing away layers of hardship she had carried alone. As the night stretched on, she sat at the kitchen table sipping warm tea, her hands wrapped around the mug, her eyes drifting toward the laughter between father and daughter. Something inside her began to thaw. She realized she hadn't felt hope in a long time, not until that small pair of arms wrapped around her. Over the next few days, Ava slowly rebuilt small pieces of her life. Mark helped her find a local shelter with openings, guided her toward community programs, even connected her to a job lead at a nearby cafe where a friend of his worked as a manager. Hannah continued to bring her drawings, tiny hugs, and sweet encouragement that felt like sunlight breaking through winter clouds. Ava wasn't magically healed. She still woke up some mornings with fear gnawing in her chest. She still battled doubt, still worried about her future, still carried scars from the months she spent alone. But she wasn't alone anymore. And sometimes, all a person needs is one moment, one act of grace, to shift the entire trajectory of their life. Months later, Ava stood behind the counter of the cafe, wearing her new uniform, greeting customers with a smile that came easier now. She had a small room at the shelter, a growing savings account, and even plans to take evening classes. Her life was far from perfect, but it was hers again. One afternoon, she saw Hannah run into the cafe, arms open wide just like the day they met. Ava knelt down, catching the little girl in a hug that felt like the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. Mark followed behind, smiling proudly at the transformation he had witnessed. Ava knew she would never forget that night in the snow, the night a child's simple act of kindness saved her. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your support helps us bring more stories of hope and second chances to life. Before the ending, please comment below, kindness can change everything. And may this story remind you that sometimes the smallest gesture, a hug, a smile, a moment of compassion, can rewrite someone's entire world.